One of the quietest, yet most liberating transformations on the spiritual path is the realization that not everyone is meant to walk beside you at the same pace. There is often a season in life when you feel responsible for the growth of everyone around you. You see someone struggling, and your heart immediately wants to lift them out of their pain. You notice destructive habits, unhealthy relationships, or limiting beliefs, and you feel compelled to show them another way. Your intentions are sincere. They come from compassion, love, and a genuine desire to ease suffering. Yet with time, you discover that even the purest intentions can become heavy when they are mixed with the need to control another person's journey. Many people confuse helping with carrying. They believe that loving someone means taking responsibility for emotions that do not belong to them. They absorb another person's anxiety, excuse repeated harmful behavior, sacrifice their own peace, and slowly convince themselves that this is what unconditional love requires. But there is an important difference between standing beside someone and carrying them on your back. One empowers, the other creates dependence. Imagine trying to pull a seed out of the ground because you want it to become a tree more quickly. No matter how deeply you care, no matter how carefully you pull, the seed will never grow faster because of your impatience. In fact, your interference may prevent the very growth you hope to encourage. The seed has its own timing. It needs darkness before it reaches the light. It needs stillness before it breaks through the soil. Human beings are much the same. Every person carries an inner season that cannot be rushed by another's enthusiasm. This truth can be difficult to accept because watching someone suffer often awakens our own discomfort. We want to remove their pain, but sometimes the pain itself is the teacher. The mistakes they keep repeating, the disappointments they continue facing, and the lessons they seem determined to avoid may eventually become the very experiences that awaken them. If someone had removed every obstacle from your own path, would you have become the person you are today? Most likely not. Some of your greatest insights were born from moments you once wished had never happened. There is profound wisdom in understanding that every soul must have its own conversation with life. Advice can point toward the door, but no one can walk through it for another. Encouragement can strengthen someone's confidence, but it cannot replace their own decision to change. Love can offer safety, but it cannot force transformation. Lasting change always begins with willingness, and willingness cannot be borrowed. This realization changes the nature of compassion. Compassion is no longer driven by urgency or fear. It becomes patient. It learns to trust that people are capable of finding their own strength, even if they have not discovered it yet. Instead of constantly trying to rescue others, you begin creating space where they can recognize their own potential. Sometimes the greatest gift you can offer is not another solution, but your quiet presence, listening without judgment, standing beside someone without trying to control the outcome, believing in their ability to grow even when they cannot yet believe in themselves. This does not mean becoming indifferent to the suffering of others, quite the opposite. It means loving them wisely instead of anxiously. Anxious love constantly asks, "How can I fix this?" Wise love asks, "How can I support this person without taking away their opportunity to become stronger?" The difference is subtle, yet it changes everything. One is rooted in fear that things may never improve. The other is rooted in trust that growth has its own rhythm. As this understanding deepens, another quiet freedom appears. You stop measuring your worth by how many people you save. You no longer feel guilty because someone refuses your advice or continues making choices you would never make. You realize that another person's decisions are not a reflection of your value or your love. Their journey belongs to them, just as yours belongs to you. This shift also transforms your relationships. Conversations become more honest because they are no longer burdened by hidden expectations. You stop trying to persuade people to become versions of themselves that exist only in your imagination. Instead, you meet them where they truly are. Ironically, this acceptance often creates the very conditions where genuine change becomes possible. People rarely grow because they feel pressured. They grow because they feel seen, respected, and free enough to choose differently. There is a quiet strength in becoming a safe place rather than a controlling force. Think of the sun. It does not chase flowers across the field demanding that they bloom. It simply shines. Every flower responds according to its own nature and its own season. Some bloom early, others bloom late, some never bloom at all. Yet the sun does not withhold its light because the outcome is uncertain. It gives without attachment. The same quality begins to emerge within you. Your kindness no longer depends on whether someone changes. Your compassion is no longer exhausted by trying to produce immediate results. You learn to offer your presence, your encouragement, and your understanding freely, without making another person's transformation the measure of your success. This allows your love to become lighter, steadier, and far more authentic. Perhaps this is one of the greatest powers a spiritually mature person can develop. The ability to care deeply without controlling, to love completely without possessing, and to remain available without abandoning themselves in the process. In that quiet balance, Relationships cease to be battles of persuasion and become spaces where freedom, dignity, and genuine transformation can unfold naturally, each person discovering in their own time the strength that has been waiting within them all along. There is a quiet moment that arrives after years of searching, questioning, learning, and transforming, when you suddenly realize that the journey was never leading you away from the world, it was preparing you to return to it differently. This realization often comes without ceremony. There are no dramatic signs in the sky, no overwhelming feeling that announces you have finally arrived. Instead, it appears in the ordinary rhythm of daily life, hidden within simple choices, quiet conversations, and the way you respond to moments that once would have unsettled you. You begin to understand that awakening was never the destination. It was the preparation. In the beginning, many people believe spiritual growth is about escaping fear, escaping suffering, escaping difficult relationships, escaping uncertainty. There is a natural longing to rise above life's complications and find a permanent state of peace. Yet life has a way of gently dismantling this illusion. It teaches that no mountain peak is meant to be lived upon forever. Eventually, every traveler must descend into the valleys where ordinary life continues. Bills still need to be paid. Families still need care. Friends still need support. The world continues with all its beauty and all its imperfections. The difference is that you no longer return as the same person who left. Imagine a blacksmith placing raw metal into a blazing fire. From the outside, the process appears harsh. The heat is intense. The hammer strikes again and again. The shape is constantly changing. If the metal could speak, it might believe it was being destroyed. Yet every strike carries intention. Every moment in the fire prepares it for a purpose it could never fulfill in its original form. Human transformation often unfolds in exactly the same way. The disappointments that humbled you, the losses that softened your heart, the failures that challenged your pride, and the seasons of loneliness that forced you to meet yourself honestly were never meaningless punishments. They were shaping your character for responsibilities you could not yet imagine. One day you stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and begin asking, "What has this prepared me to become?" That single question changes everything. Your past is no longer a collection of wounds to hide. It becomes a source of wisdom that allows you to understand others with greater compassion. The pain you once wished to erase becomes the bridge that helps someone else feel less alone. This is one of life's greatest paradoxes. The qualities we admire most in others rarely come from comfort. Patience is usually born from waiting. Empathy grows from personal heartbreak. Courage develops by repeatedly facing fear instead of avoiding it. Humility often emerges after failure, reminds us of our limitations. These qualities cannot be purchased or borrowed. They are earned quietly through experience, and once they become part of you, they naturally begin serving everyone whose life intersects with yours. There is also a profound shift in how you define success. Earlier in life, success may have meant proving yourself, gaining recognition, or achieving goals that others could admire. While there is nothing wrong with accomplishment, awakening gradually changes the focus. You become less interested in being impressive and more interested in being useful. Instead of asking how many people notice your gifts, you begin asking how many lives are gently touched because you chose to use them. This is a quieter ambition, but it carries far greater meaning. Think about a candle in a dark room. It does not ask whether the darkness deserves its light. It does not compare itself to brighter flames or worry about receiving applause. It simply fulfills its purpose by illuminating whatever surrounds it. In the same way, your growth is no longer measured by how extraordinary you appear, but by how consistently you bring clarity, kindness, wisdom, and courage into ordinary moments. A patient conversation with someone who is struggling, a forgiving response when anger would be easier, a calm presence during chaos. These small acts rarely make headlines, yet they quietly transform the lives of those who experience them. As this understanding deepens, you also begin to see responsibility in a new light. Responsibility is no longer a burden placed upon your shoulders. It becomes a privilege. Every lesson life has taught you now carries an invitation. If you have learned how to remain hopeful through disappointment, someone will one day need your hope. If you have discovered the strength to forgive, another person may find healing because you chose mercy over resentment. If you have learned to listen without judgment, your presence may become the safe place where another human being finally feels understood. This is how awakening continues long after the extraordinary experiences have faded. It lives in the choices you make when no one is watching. It reveals itself in the integrity of your character rather than the excitement of your emotions. It is reflected in the consistency with which you treat strangers, loved ones, and even yourself. The world does not need more people who merely speak about wisdom. It longs for people whose lives quietly demonstrate it. Perhaps the greatest revelation is that your gifts were never given simply for your own fulfillment. They were entrusted to you so they could flow through you. Just as a river remains alive because it keeps moving, the wisdom you have gained becomes fully alive only when it is shared through compassion, service, honesty, and quiet courage. The journey that once seemed entirely personal gradually reveals its deeper purpose. Every insight was preparing you not to withdraw from humanity, but to participate in it more fully. Not to stand above others, but to stand among them with an open heart, steady hands, and a spirit that has learned the rare and beautiful art of turning personal transformation into a source of light for the world around it. The final stage of genuine transformation is rarely the one people imagine. Many expect that after years of inner work, they will become someone extraordinary in the eyes of the world. They imagine possessing remarkable insight, unshakable confidence, or an almost mystical ability to influence every situation they encounter. Yet true spiritual power reveals itself in an entirely different way. It becomes quieter, humbler, and far less interested in being noticed. It is no longer concerned with appearing awakened. It is devoted to becoming deeply useful. There is a profound difference between having power over people and having power within yourself. The first seeks control. The second creates freedom. Throughout history, countless individuals have pursued influence by trying to change the behavior of others, believing that authority would bring fulfillment. But lasting transformation has never begun with control. It has always begun with character. A person who has learned to master their own reactions possesses a strength that no title, position, or public recognition can ever provide. Think about a mountain standing beneath an ever-changing sky. Storms come and go, snow covers its peaks, rain shapes its cliffs, seasons transform its appearance again and again. Yet the mountain does not abandon its nature because the weather changes. It remains grounded, steady, and unmoved by temporary conditions. Spiritual maturity creates this same quiet stability within a person. Life continues to change, but your values no longer change with every circumstance. You become someone others can depend on, not because you have all the answers, but because your presence itself offers reassurance. This kind of power cannot be measured by applause or admiration. In fact, many of the people who possess it never consider themselves powerful at all. They simply live with integrity. They keep their promises even when no one is watching. They choose honesty when dishonesty would be easier. They remain compassionate when bitterness seems justified. These choices may appear ordinary, but together they create an extraordinary life. Character is built not through grand gestures but through thousands of quiet decisions that align with what is true. One of the greatest signs of this inner power is the ability to remain humble while recognizing your own worth. Humility is often misunderstood as thinking less of yourself, but genuine humility is something far richer. It is thinking of yourself accurately. It means acknowledging your strengths without becoming arrogant and accepting your weaknesses without becoming ashamed. You no longer need to exaggerate your accomplishments or hide your imperfections. You become comfortable being fully human. This freedom changes the way you relate to other people. You stop competing with their success because you understand that another person's light does not diminish your own. You celebrate their victories without secretly comparing them to your journey. Envy begins to lose its hold because your identity is no longer built upon measuring yourself against others. Instead, you become inspired by the goodness you see around you, recognizing that every act of courage or kindness adds something valuable to the world you all share. There is also a remarkable shift in how you use your voice. Earlier in life, you may have felt the need to prove your wisdom, defend your opinions, or win every disagreement. But as your understanding deepens, you begin to appreciate the strength of listening. You discover that people often reveal far more when they feel genuinely heard than when they are given endless advice. Silence becomes less about withholding words and more about creating space where truth can emerge naturally. Consider the image of a deep lake at dawn. Its surface is so still that it reflects the sky with perfect clarity. It does not force the reflection into existence. Its calmness allows it to appear. The human mind works much the same way. When it is constantly disturbed by ego, fear, and the need to be right, clarity becomes difficult. But when it grows quiet, wisdom reflects itself effortlessly. Others feel this calm even if they cannot explain it. They leave conversations with you feeling lighter, not because you solved every problem, but because your presence reminded them of their own strength. Another expression of true power is the willingness to serve without expecting recognition. Modern culture often encourages visibility, encouraging people to measure their value by attention, followers, or praise. Yet some of the most meaningful acts in history were performed by individuals whose names were never remembered. A word of encouragement spoken at the right moment, a generous act done in secret, a decision to forgive instead of retaliate. These moments rarely become famous, yet they echo through lives in ways that cannot be measured. When you begin living from this place, your purpose no longer depends on extraordinary opportunities. Every ordinary day becomes meaningful because every interaction carries the possibility of bringing hope, patience, or understanding into someone else's experience. You no longer wait for life to give you an important mission. You realize that your mission has been quietly unfolding in front of you all along, in the way you treat the people you meet, the integrity you bring to your work, the compassion you offer during difficult conversations, and the quiet courage with which you face each new day. Perhaps this is the greatest power a human being can possess, Not the power to escape hardship, predict the future, or control the lives of others, but the power to remain deeply rooted in truth while extending kindness into a world that often forgets its value. It is the ability to transform pain into wisdom, knowledge into action, and awakening into a way of living so authentic that your life itself becomes an invitation for others to believe that lasting change is possible. In the end, the strongest people are not those who demand to be seen, but those whose quiet presence leaves every place, every conversation, and every heart just a little brighter than they found it. There comes a point in every meaningful inner journey when you realize that the greatest obstacle was never the world outside you. It was the invisible belief that you were somehow incomplete. For years, perhaps even decades, you searched for the missing piece. You believed one more achievement would finally make you feel worthy. One perfect relationship would erase loneliness. One profound spiritual experience would silence every doubt. One final answer would bring lasting peace. Yet every destination reached eventually became another beginning, and every answer uncovered revealed new questions waiting beneath it. This realization can feel both humbling and liberating. It asks you to release one of the oldest stories the human mind has ever told itself, the story that fulfillment exists somewhere else. It whispers that perhaps the life you have been trying so hard to reach has quietly been unfolding beneath your feet all along. Imagine someone standing beside a vast lake while desperately searching for water. They carry empty buckets, study maps, and ask countless travelers where water can be found, never noticing the reflection shimmering just inches away. From the outside, the answer seems obvious. Yet in our own lives, we often do exactly the same thing. We search for peace while overlooking moments of stillness. We search for love while forgetting to extend kindness to ourselves. We search for purpose while ignoring the opportunities already waiting in today's ordinary responsibilities. One of the greatest gifts of awakening is not receiving something new, but seeing clearly what has always been present. Gratitude begins replacing constant dissatisfaction. Contentment quietly takes the place of endless comparison. You stop measuring your life against imagined futures and begin noticing the quiet richness of what already exists. A meaningful conversation, the warmth of morning sunlight through a window, the familiar laughter of someone you love, the privilege of beginning again after making mistakes. These moments may appear ordinary, but they carry an extraordinary depth when your attention is fully present. This shift also changes your relationship with ambition. Earlier in life, ambition may have been driven by the need to prove yourself. Every accomplishment became evidence that you mattered. Every success temporarily filled an inner emptiness, only for that feeling to fade, demanding another achievement to replace it. But when your identity becomes rooted in something deeper than performance, ambition itself transforms. You no longer pursue excellence because you are afraid of being insignificant. You pursue it because you recognize your gifts as opportunities to contribute. There is a profound difference between striving from fear and striving from purpose. Fear constantly asks, how can I become enough? Purpose quietly asks, how can I give what I already have? One is built upon scarcity. The other grows from abundance. One exhausts the soul because it never feels complete. The other renews the spirit because every act of service becomes an expression of gratitude rather than desperation. This understanding changes how you face uncertainty as well. You stop believing that every unanswered question is a threat. Instead, uncertainty becomes an invitation to trust the qualities you have developed over time. You realize that resilience matters more than prediction. Courage matters more than guarantees. Character matters more than perfect circumstances. The future remains unknown, but you are no longer frightened by that mystery because you have learned that the person you are becoming is capable of meeting whatever arrives. Think of an experienced sailor crossing the open sea. They cannot control the direction of the wind or the sudden arrival of storms. Yet years of experience have taught them something more valuable than control. They have learned how to adjust the sails. They trust their skill more than they fear the weather. In the same way, spiritual maturity does not eliminate life's uncertainties. It teaches you how to navigate them with wisdom instead of panic. As this awareness deepens, forgiveness also begins to take on new meaning. You stop carrying old versions of yourself like permanent identities. The mistakes that once filled you with shame become reminders of how far you have traveled. You no longer judge your younger self for not knowing what only experience could teach. Instead, you begin treating your past with compassion, recognizing that every chapter, even the painful ones, played a role in shaping the person you are today. This compassion naturally extends toward others. You become slower to judge because you understand that every person is carrying invisible struggles. Some are fighting battles they have never spoken about. Others are trying to heal wounds they barely understand themselves. This realization softens your heart. You begin offering the same patience to others that you once desperately needed for yourself. Gradually, life stops feeling like a race towards some distant finish line. It becomes a relationship, one that invites your full attention, your honesty, your curiosity, and your willingness to grow. Each day offers another opportunity to practice wisdom instead of merely discussing it. Each challenge becomes another chance to strengthen your character rather than question your worth. The search for completion quietly dissolves because you recognize that growth is not about becoming someone entirely different. It is about uncovering the wholeness that has patiently existed beneath your fears all along. Perhaps that is the deepest power of all, not the ability to escape uncertainty or avoid pain, but the quiet recognition that you no longer need to chase the person you were meant to become. With every choice rooted in truth, every act of compassion, every moment of genuine presence, and every step taken with integrity, you are already becoming that person. The journey continues, not because you are incomplete, but because life itself is an endless invitation to express more fully the wisdom, love, and quiet strength that have been growing within you from the very beginning. There is a remarkable shift that happens when you stop asking life, "What can I receive?" and begin asking, "What can I contribute?" At first, this question may seem simple, but it changes the entire direction of your existence. It moves your attention away from constant self-concern and toward meaningful participation. Instead of seeing yourself as someone waiting for life to finally deliver happiness, you begin recognizing that your presence has the power to shape the lives of others in ways both visible and invisible. Many people spend years believing that fulfillment is something that arrives after enough success, enough recognition, or enough possessions have been collected. They imagine a future where they will finally feel complete, only to discover that every achievement creates another horizon to pursue. The destination keeps moving because the search itself is built upon the belief that something essential is missing. Yet genuine fulfillment begins the moment you realize that life becomes richest, not when everything flows toward you, but when something valuable begins flowing through you. Think about a river. It remains alive because it keeps moving. Water that refuses to flow eventually becomes stagnant. It loses its freshness because it clings to itself. Human beings are much the same. Our wisdom grows deeper when it is shared. Our kindness becomes stronger when it is expressed. Our courage expands when it is used in service of something greater than our own comfort. The gifts we protect out of fear often remain small, but the gifts we generously offer have a way of multiplying beyond anything we could have imagined. This understanding transforms the meaning of purpose. Purpose is often mistaken for a grand mission that only a fortunate few are destined to discover. People wait for dramatic signs, perfect opportunities, or extraordinary circumstances before believing their lives truly matter. Yet purpose rarely announces itself with spectacle. More often it quietly reveals itself in the ordinary opportunities that appear every single day. It is found in listening carefully when someone feels unheard. It is found in offering encouragement to someone who has forgotten their own strength. It is found in choosing honesty when deception would be easier, and compassion when judgment feels more convenient. These moments may seem insignificant on their own, but together they shape the kind of person you become. A life of meaning is rarely built through one extraordinary decision. It is built through thousands of ordinary ones, repeated with sincerity and intention. The smallest acts often leave the deepest impressions because they remind people that goodness still exists in the world. There is also a quiet liberation that comes from no longer needing immediate results. Earlier in life, you may have expected every effort to produce visible success. If your kindness was not appreciated, you questioned whether it mattered. If your work went unnoticed, you wondered whether it had value. But spiritual maturity changes this perspective. You begin understanding that not everything meaningful can be measured. Some seeds remain hidden beneath the soil for a long time before anyone notices their growth. Imagine planting a tree whose shade you may never personally enjoy. At first glance, such an act might seem unrewarding. Yet generations later, strangers may rest beneath its branches without ever knowing who planted it. Many of the most important contributions in life are like this. A word spoken with kindness today may become someone's source of hope years later. A lesson shared with patience may quietly shape decisions long after the conversation has ended. Number 7. Signs your spiritual awakening is over. It's time to use your powers. There comes a moment in every profound inner journey that feels strangely disappointing. Not because something has gone wrong, but because nothing extraordinary seems to be happening anymore. The visions become quieter. The emotional highs begin to fade. The constant search for signs, symbols, and hidden messages slowly loses its urgency. The books that once felt like sacred maps now gather dust on the shelf. Meditation becomes less dramatic. Silence no longer feels mysterious. It simply feels silent. Many people mistake this moment for failure. They believe they have lost their connection. They think the awakening has ended. But perhaps the greatest misunderstanding about awakening is believing it was ever meant to become a permanent emotional experience. Imagine a child learning to walk. The first successful step feels miraculous. Every movement is celebrated. Every small success feels like magic. But eventually, walking becomes ordinary. Does that mean the child has forgotten how to walk? Or does it simply mean walking has become part of who they are? This is the secret almost no one speaks about. The purpose of awakening was never to keep you amazed. Its purpose was to transform the person who experiences ordinary life. Real transformation always becomes invisible. The strongest roots are buried beneath the earth. The deepest rivers flow quietly. The brightest stars are often impossible to see during daylight. Perhaps the reason your spiritual life feels less exciting is because it is no longer trying to impress you. It is trying to become you. Many people become addicted to spiritual experiences. They chase powerful emotions the same way others chase success, relationships, or wealth. One retreat after another, one teacher after another, one revelation after another. Yet every mountain climbed eventually becomes another place to stand. The soul was never asking you to collect extraordinary moments. It was asking you to become an extraordinary human being. There is an enormous difference. One seeks experiences. The other transforms character. One depends on emotional intensity. The other develops quiet strength. The greatest awakening is not seeing more light. It is becoming someone who naturally brings light wherever they go. This is why many ancient traditions speak less about mystical experiences and more about compassion, courage, honesty, patience, and responsibility. Because eventually, every spiritual lesson asks exactly the same question. Now that you understand, who will you become? Knowledge without embodiment becomes decoration. Wisdom only becomes real when another human being can feel its presence through your actions. A calm person entering a chaotic room changes the atmosphere, not because they speak loudly, but because they no longer need to. That is power. Real power rarely announces itself. It transforms quietly. Perhaps you have noticed something unusual recently. The problems that once consumed your thoughts no longer carry the same emotional weight. Situations that would have shattered your peace years ago now pass through your mind like passing clouds. You still experience sadness. You still experience fear. You still experience uncertainty. But they no longer define your identity. This is not emotional numbness. This is emotional freedom. There is a profound difference. One suppresses feeling. The other allows feeling without becoming imprisoned by it. Imagine standing beside the ocean. The waves continue to rise and fall. Storms still arrive. But beneath the surface, the deep water remains remarkably still. Your inner life begins to resemble that depth. This is not the end of awakening. This is what awakening was preparing you for all along. Another surprising sign appears when your need for certainty begins to dissolve. For years, perhaps you wanted every answer. You searched endlessly for life's purpose. You wanted guarantees. You wanted clarity before taking action. Yet slowly, something changes. You become comfortable walking without seeing the entire path. You realize that certainty was often another form of fear, disguised as wisdom. Life has never promised complete understanding. It has only offered participation. The tree does not know every season it will survive. It simply continues growing. The river does not demand to see the ocean before it begins flowing. It moves because movement is its nature. Likewise, your life begins unfolding through trust rather than control. You stop demanding that existence explain itself before you agree to live it. And strangely, this surrender makes you stronger than certainty ever could. Because courage is not built by having all the answers. Courage is built by continuing despite their absence. Then another quiet transformation arrives. You stop trying to rescue everyone. This may sound cold at first, but it is actually one of the deepest expressions of love. There was a time when you believed healing meant fixing other people. You carried emotional burdens that were never yours. You confused responsibility with sacrifice. But eventually you discover a painful truth. No one changes because you exhaust yourself. People change when they become ready. Just as no one could awaken on your behalf, neither can you awaken for someone else. You can inspire, you can support, you can love, but you cannot force transformation. And once you truly understand this, your relationships become healthier. Love becomes lighter. Presence replaces pressure. You stop dragging people toward the light. Instead, you become a light that quietly remains available, without control, without expectation, without fear. Another unmistakable sign emerges when your identity becomes less dependent on external validation. Compliments still feel pleasant, criticism still carries information, but neither determines your worth. Imagine a mirror. Most people spend their lives polishing the reflection instead of caring for the person standing before it. Awakening reverses this relationship. You become more interested in truth than appearance, more interested in integrity than reputation, more interested in inner alignment than public approval. And this changes everything. Because a person who no longer depends on applause becomes impossible to manipulate. Freedom begins where approval ends. Then something remarkable happens. You become fascinated by ordinary life again. A sunrise, a conversation, preparing food, listening deeply, walking through rain, watching children laugh. These moments stop feeling ordinary, not because the world has changed, because you have. The extraordinary was never hidden inside distant mystical experiences. It was quietly waiting beneath your distracted attention. Presence reveals miracles that urgency could never see. Perhaps this is the greatest irony. The awakening that once pulled you away from everyday life eventually returns you to it with new eyes. Nothing appears different, yet everything feels alive. Finally, there comes the moment that many never recognize. You stop asking, "What power have I received?" and begin asking, "What responsibility comes with becoming this person?" Because every genuine transformation carries responsibility. If you have learned patience, someone will eventually need your patience. If you have learned compassion, life will send people who require compassion. If you have learned courage, circumstances will invite courage. Your gifts are never given for admiration. They are given for participation. This is where awakening quietly ends. Not in enlightenment, not in perfection, but in usefulness. The seed no longer dreams of becoming a tree. It becomes one. The river no longer speaks about reaching the sea. It arrives. The light no longer searches for darkness to defeat. It simply shines. And perhaps that is the final revelation. Your spiritual awakening was never meant to separate you from the world. It was preparing you to return to it. Not as someone searching for power, but as someone who has finally become responsible enough to use it. The greatest power was never the ability to escape ordinary life. It was the ability to stand fully within it, with an open heart, a clear mind, unwavering compassion, and the quiet courage to become the answer you once spent years searching for. There comes a subtle moment on every authentic inner journey, when the excitement begins to disappear. At first, this can feel unsettling. The experiences that once filled you with wonder become less frequent. The vivid emotions, the powerful insights, the overwhelming sense that the universe is constantly speaking to you, all of it begins to quiet down. Many people reach this point and assume they have somehow lost their connection. They wonder if they have failed, if they have drifted away from whatever awakened them in the first place. Yet what often feels like an ending is actually the beginning of something far more profound. Human beings naturally associate growth with intensity. We remember the dramatic moments, the breakthrough conversation, the unexpected realization, the night everything seemed to change. Those experiences are unforgettable because they interrupt the familiar rhythm of life. They shake us awake. But awakening itself was never meant to remain a continuous earthquake. If the ground kept shaking forever, nothing stable could ever be built upon it. Transformation requires both disruption and stillness. One breaks the old foundation, the other allows a new one to take root. Think of learning a new language. At first, every new word feels like a discovery. Every sentence you understand fills you with excitement because it reminds you that progress is happening. But after years of practice, you stop celebrating each word. You simply speak. The language becomes part of you. No one mourns the loss of excitement when they become fluent. Fluency is the goal. In much the same way, spiritual understanding eventually stops feeling extraordinary because it has become woven into the fabric of your everyday awareness. This is why silence can feel so confusing. We often mistake silence for absence when, in reality, silence is frequently a sign of maturity. A teacher speaks constantly to a beginner because every step requires instruction. But as the student develops, fewer words become necessary. The lessons have moved beyond information. They have become instinct. The same thing happens within your inner life. The endless questioning begins to soften. You no longer need every answer immediately because something deeper than certainty has started guiding you. There is a quiet confidence that cannot be manufactured. It does not arrive through dramatic experiences, but through repeated encounters with yourself. Every disappointment survived, every fear faced, every difficult truth accepted, slowly reshapes your inner landscape. One day you realize that the person who once panicked at uncertainty now meets it with curiosity. The person who constantly searched for reassurance now trusts their own judgment. The change is so gradual that you almost miss it, yet it has transformed everything. Many people spend years searching for signs because they believe wisdom always announces itself with fireworks. They expect profound truths to arrive in moments of overwhelming emotion. But life often whispers its greatest lessons. A tree does not become taller in a single dramatic instant. Day after day, unseen beneath the surface, its roots stretch deeper into the earth. No audience applauds this invisible work. No celebration marks each new inch of growth. Yet without those hidden roots, the tree could never withstand the storms that inevitably arrive. The same is true for human beings. Your strongest qualities are rarely formed during moments of comfort. Patience grows while waiting. Courage grows while afraid. Compassion grows while carrying pain without allowing it to become bitterness. None of these transformations feel spectacular while they are happening. They feel ordinary, even frustrating. Only later do you recognize that the quiet seasons shaped you more deeply than the dramatic ones ever could. Perhaps this is why so many people become trapped chasing emotional highs. They mistake powerful feelings for lasting growth. But emotions are weather. They change constantly. Identity is climate. It changes slowly. Someone who depends on inspiration will always fear losing it. Someone who has become disciplined, grounded, and present no longer depends on emotional intensity to continue growing. They have learned that consistency often accomplishes what excitement never could. When the search begins to fade, another gift quietly appears. You stop looking outside yourself for constant confirmation that you are on the right path. Instead of asking whether every event carries a hidden message, you begin asking a different question. How can I respond to this moment with wisdom? That shift changes everything. Life is no longer something you decode. It becomes something you participate in fully. Every conversation becomes an opportunity to listen more deeply. Every challenge becomes an invitation to practice what you already know. Every ordinary day becomes a place where transformation proves itself through action rather than theory. This is the paradox that surprises almost everyone. The end of constant spiritual excitement is not the loss of awakening. It is evidence that awakening has begun settling into the deepest parts of your character. What once felt like extraordinary moments now expresses itself through ordinary choices. You become calmer without trying to appear calm, kinder without seeking recognition, stronger without needing to prove your strength. The silence that once frightened you gradually becomes familiar, and eventually it becomes comforting. It is no longer empty. It is full of quiet understanding, patient awareness, and the unmistakable feeling that the journey has finally moved from your mind into your way of being. There is a subtle but life-changing difference between collecting wisdom and becoming wise. At first, that difference is almost impossible to see. Both paths may look the same from the outside. Both involve reading books, listening to teachers, reflecting deeply, and searching for truth. Yet one path fills the mind while the other transforms the person. One gathers ideas like treasures on a shelf. The other allows those ideas to reshape every decision, every relationship, and every moment of ordinary life. In the beginning of any inner journey, seeking knowledge feels exciting. Every new insight seems to unlock another hidden door. You discover perspectives that challenge everything you once believed. Questions that haunted you begin to find answers. There is a sense of expansion, as though your world has suddenly become much larger than you imagined. This stage is important because understanding opens possibilities that ignorance could never reveal. But knowledge alone has a hidden danger. It can create the comforting illusion that understanding something is the same as living it. Many people know the value of forgiveness, yet continue carrying resentment. They understand the importance of presence, yet spend their days distracted. They speak beautifully about compassion while quietly judging themselves and others. This is not hypocrisy as much as it is the natural gap between intellectual understanding and embodied wisdom. The mind learns quickly, the heart changes slowly. Character changes even more slowly. Imagine someone studying the ocean for years. They memorize every current, every tide, every species beneath the surface. They can explain how waves form and predict the weather with remarkable accuracy, yet they have never stepped into the water. Another person says very little about the sea, but has spent years sailing through storms, navigating uncertainty, and learning to trust both preparation and instinct. Which one truly knows the ocean? Information has value, but experience gives information its meaning. The same is true of personal transformation. Reading about courage is not the same as choosing honesty when telling the truth may cost you something valuable. Understanding patience is different from remaining calm while life unfolds more slowly than you hoped. Knowing that fear is natural means little until you decide to move forward, despite your trembling hands. Wisdom begins where theory meets reality. Life has a remarkable way of testing what we claim to believe. It does not ask us to repeat beautiful ideas, it asks us to embody them. If you say love matters, life will place difficult people in your path. If you believe kindness is powerful, opportunities will arise to choose kindness when no one is watching. If you value integrity, moments will come when compromise seems easier than honesty. In these ordinary decisions, philosophy becomes flesh, principles become personality. This is why genuine growth often feels less dramatic than expected. There may be no great revelation announcing that you have changed. Instead, one day you notice that you respond differently than you once would have. A criticism that used to keep you awake all night now passes through your thoughts without taking control. A disagreement that once became an argument now becomes a conversation. An unexpected setback no longer destroys your sense of purpose. These moments seem small, but they reveal a profound truth. You are no longer trying to practice wisdom. Wisdom has begun practicing itself through you. There is also a quiet humility that develops during this stage. Earlier in the journey, it is easy to believe that more knowledge will solve every problem. You imagine there is one final book, one perfect lesson, one ultimate realization waiting somewhere beyond the horizon. But with time, you begin to appreciate that life itself is the greatest teacher. Every disappointment carries instruction. Every relationship reflects something about your own heart. Every season of uncertainty develops qualities that certainty never could. Instead of endlessly searching for new answers, you begin paying deeper attention to the experiences already unfolding around you. This shift changes the way you see other people as well. You become less interested in proving that you are right and more interested in understanding. Conversations become opportunities to learn rather than competitions to win. You recognize that every person carries invisible struggles, hidden fears, and untold stories. Compassion becomes easier because you no longer assume you know the whole picture. The desire to impress gradually gives way to the desire to connect. Perhaps the most beautiful part of embodying wisdom is that it happens quietly. Trees do not announce their growth each morning. Rivers do not celebrate every mile they travel toward the sea. They simply continue becoming what they were created to be. Human transformation unfolds in much the same way. The greatest changes rarely attract attention because they occur beneath the surface, shaping attitudes, habits, and intentions long before anyone else notices them. Eventually, there comes a moment when you realize you no longer need to convince people that you have changed. Your peace speaks before your words do. Your patience communicates more than your explanations ever could. Your actions become more persuasive than your opinions. This is the silent power of embodied wisdom. It is not concerned with appearing enlightened. It is devoted to living truth so naturally that the distance between what you believe and how you live becomes almost impossible to see. In that quiet alignment, the search for wisdom gives way to something infinitely greater. You become a living expression of the very truths you once spent years trying to understand. There is a freedom that many people spend their entire lives searching for, yet they often look in the wrong places. They search for it in perfect circumstances, in successful careers, in relationships without conflict, or in a future where everything finally makes sense. They believe that peace is something life will eventually hand to them once enough problems have been solved. But sooner or later, experience reveals a quieter truth. Peace is not the absence of difficulty. Freedom is not the absence of emotion. The deepest liberation begins when your inner world is no longer controlled by every event happening around you. There was probably a time when every opinion felt personal. A careless comment from someone else could linger in your mind for days. A single failure seemed capable of defining your entire identity. Every setback became evidence that you were not enough, and every success temporarily convinced you that perhaps you were. Life became an exhausting cycle of emotional highs and lows because your sense of self rose and fell with circumstances that were never fully under your control. This is how many people unknowingly live. They become emotional passengers instead of conscious participants. Every external event takes hold of the steering wheel. Praise lifts them higher than they should rise. Criticism pushes them lower than they deserve to fall. They are constantly reacting, constantly adjusting themselves to fit the expectations, judgments, and moods of the world around them. It is a tiring way to live because the world is unpredictable. If your peace depends entirely upon what happens outside you, then your peace will always remain fragile. Real awakening begins to change this relationship. Not because difficult emotions disappear, but because you stop believing every emotion deserves to become your identity. Fear may still knock at your door, but it no longer moves into your home. Sadness may sit beside you for a while, but it no longer convinces you that joy has disappeared forever. Anger may arise when injustice appears, yet it no longer controls your words or determines your actions. The emotions still visit, but they are no longer in charge. Imagine standing beside a wide river after heavy rain. Leaves, branches, and debris are carried by the powerful current. If you jumped into that river and grabbed every passing object, you would quickly become exhausted. But standing safely on the shore, you can watch everything flow by without needing to possess any of it. Thoughts and emotions work in much the same way. They move through the mind continuously. Some are pleasant, others are painful. Wisdom does not require you to cling to every thought or wrestle with every feeling. It simply asks you to observe them without allowing them to define who you are. This kind of emotional freedom is often misunderstood. Some imagine it means becoming detached, cold, or indifferent. Yet the opposite is true. A person who is emotionally free actually feels life more deeply because they are no longer afraid of their own emotions. They can grieve without believing they are broken. They can love without becoming consumed by attachment. They can experience disappointment without losing hope. They no longer spend their energy resisting every uncomfortable feeling. Instead, they allow emotions to complete their natural journey. Fear, for example, is not always an enemy. Sometimes it simply announces that you are standing at the edge of growth. Courage has never meant the absence of fear. It has always meant refusing to let fear make your decisions. Likewise, uncertainty is not proof that you are lost. It is often the space where new possibilities quietly begin to emerge. The person who understands this stops demanding that life eliminate uncertainty before they move forward. They take the next step anyway. Another remarkable change occurs when the need for external validation begins to loosen its grip. For years, many people unknowingly build their identity upon the reactions of others. They feel valuable when admired and invisible when ignored. Their confidence depends on applause, approval, or recognition. But this creates a life that is constantly vulnerable to opinions that change as quickly as the weather. Eventually, something shifts. You begin asking a different question. Instead of wondering whether others approve of you, you ask whether your actions align with your own values. Instead of seeking acceptance everywhere you go, you become committed to living honestly with yourself. This quiet shift changes the foundation of your confidence. It is no longer borrowed from the outside world. It grows from within. Think of a lighthouse standing on a rugged coastline. Storms arrive without warning. Massive waves crash against the rocks. Fierce winds shake everything around it. Yet the lighthouse does not argue with the storm. It does not beg the sea to become calmer. It simply continues shining. Its purpose remains unchanged regardless of the weather surrounding it. Emotional freedom develops the same steady quality within a human being. You stop expecting life to remove every challenge before you allow yourself to remain peaceful. Instead, your peace becomes something you carry into every circumstance. This does not mean you never struggle again. There will still be moments of confusion, heartbreak, and disappointment. There will still be days when tears come unexpectedly or when uncertainty feels heavier than usual. But even in those moments, something fundamental has changed. Beneath the waves of emotion, there is a deeper awareness that quietly reminds you that this feeling is temporary. You no longer mistake passing weather for the climate of your soul. The storm may fill the sky, but somewhere beyond the clouds, the sun remains exactly where it has always been. And perhaps this is the quiet miracle of emotional freedom. It is not that life becomes easier or that every fear disappears. It is that your inner world becomes spacious enough to hold every emotion without being ruled by any of them. You discover that true strength is not found in controlling every circumstance, but in remaining deeply rooted in your own truth, allowing compassion, patience, and quiet courage to guide your life long after the emotional waves have come and gone.